Welcome back. In this video, we are going to understand the config map. So the agenda for this video is first we are going to start and learn what is config map, how it is different from the secrets, what is the need for the config map in the real world, and then we are going to do the practical for that. So let's get started. So the first thing is, what is the config map? Config map in simple term is used to store the non-confidential information. So if you want to store any of the confidential information, we have the secrets. Okay, now let me give you one example so that you can understand this thing better. Let's suppose you are creating a deployment, and in the deployment you have the username and the password, or in the deployment you have the certificate information which you need to hide. And if you want to hide that information, you can use the secret for that. Secret is for the sensitive data, username, password, certificate, all those kind of things. Now let's suppose there is a configuration file which you need to add in multiple deployments. So rather than adding that configuration file into the deployment multiple times, what you can do is you can create a config map for that, and you can refer that config map in the deployment. So that is the use of the config map. Once we are going to do the demo, you will understand it better. So the config map we can consume as an environment variable. I'm sure you all know what exactly the environment variable. If not, then you can simply type the environment and you will see what exactly the environment variable is. We can use it as a command line, and we can also use it as a configuration file. Remember one more thing, whatever the data we are going to store in the config map, that is going to be in the map. So key value pair. So here I am into my terminal, and here if I'm going to do the ls, I have couple of files, one with the name config-map.yaml and the other one is the deployment.yaml. So let me open one of the file, that is nano, or let me do cat config.yaml. Let me explain this file. So here if you see, we have the API version, that is a standard. Whenever we are going to create any of the YAML file, we need to start something like this only. Then we have the kind, and the kind we need to provide the config map. If we are creating secret, then we need to type secret. If we are creating a pod, then we need to type pod here. If we are creating a deployment, then the deployment. So whatever we are creating, we need to give that information in the kind. After that, we have the metadata. In the metadata, we can have other values as well, but as of now, I'm only going with the name. So the name of this config map, and the name of this config map is nginx-config. After that, we have the data. So from this place, we can give our configuration file. So if you see nginx.config, and after that we have this dot, and we have the configuration file information where we are telling, okay, it is going to listen on port number 80 and server name is going to be example.com and the location is this, event is going to be this. So all those things we are defining it here. So it is a key value pair. So this is a key. Okay. And this is a value. Okay. Key. And this is the value. It is always in the key value pair. Now let's go and see the deployment file. Deployment file is easy. API version is app v1. It's a standard. Again, kind is going to be deployment. Metadata, this is the name of the deployment. So you can give any name. Then we have the specification replica 1. So how many, whatever we are deploying, so how many containers we need. So this value we can give here. So if I'm going to provide 3, then that means it is going to create 3 pod here. Then we have the selector, match label, template. So you can ignore this value as well, but this is something important in the real time. So that is the reason I have it here. After that, we have the specification. In the specification, we have the container information. So the container information. Now the name of the container is nginx, and the image which it is going to use nginx.latest. Even if we are not going to provide this latest, it is going to use the latest. Or if we need to use any of the specific version or tag, then we can provide that information as well. And from where this thing is coming, this is coming from the Docker Hub. Then we have the port information. Then we have the volume mount and the volume. Now this volume mount is referring to this volume. So basically we need the volume. So in the container, we have the name, we have the pod, and we have the volume. Now this is the volume, and from where this volume is coming, this volume name, this is the name of the volume. So don't get confused with the name of the config map here. We can give any name here, like nginx config.volume, okay? But whatever the name we are going to give here, in the volume mount, we need to give the same name. So volume mount, it's going to refer the volume from here. And in this volume, we are telling to use the config map information. And the name of the config map is nginx-config. If I'm going to do cat, here if you see, the name is nginx.config. So the same name we are providing. This is a config map information we are providing it here. This is the volume name. So whatever the volume name we are going to give here, in the volume mount, we need to provide the same information. And where exactly it is going to mount this volume? It is going to mount this volume here. So once we have our container ready, once we go inside the container, then this is the location where I will get my config map information. And in the config map, what information we have this information. This information we can simply see here. Okay. Again, volume mount refer to volume. So whatever the name of the volume we are giving it here. See, we are giving the volume option here and we are giving the name, then the config map. Here it might be we have the ABS volume, that is from the AWS, or we have the Azure volume, or we have the blob storage, anything, any volume we have it here. We need to provide that information here. And in order to bound that with the volume, we need to provide that information here. We can also give this information in a separate file, but here we are not using the external storage, so that is okay. We are using the config map, so we can give it here. Now let's deploy this thing. So let me do ls first. We have two files, config-map.yaml and deployment.yaml. Let me deploy this thing. So the command is kubectl apply -f, and after that we need to give the name config. So we have the config map created. Let me create the deployment as well. So the same command I need to go with, it's just that I need to change the file name. Deployment. Done. kubectl get pod. So we have one pod which is in the deploying stage at the moment. It is in the creating state. So let's see. Yes, it is in the running state. We have also created one of the config maps. So let's see. kubectl get config map. Yes, we have the config map as well. And in order to get more detail related to this config map, what we can do is we can go with the describe command. And in the describe command, we can see the namespace, and then we have this information. Event, HTTP in this information. Okay. kubectl get pod. We can also see more information related to the pod. So kubectl describe pod, and then we need to provide the pod name. So this is the name of my pod. And here if you see, we have the events, which is telling me successfully pulled image, container created, container started successfully. So everything running as expected. Okay. kubectl get deployment. So this is the deployment, and if we need more information, we can go with -o, or we can also describe this thing and we will get more information related to this. Now I need to check whatever the config map information I have given, is it really mapped to the container or not? So for that, what I'm going to do is I will go inside the container and check. So in order to go inside the container, what I need to do is first kubectl get pod. This is the pod. kubectl exec -it. Then we need to provide the name of the pod. This is the name of the pod. Okay. And after that, --, then bin bash. We are inside this. And if we are going to scroll up a little bit, and if we look at our deployment file, okay, cat deployment, this is my deployment file. Okay, it is not showing me complete. So let me do one thing. Let me come out of this first and then cat deployment. If you see, we have a mount point, this thing. Let me copy this information. Now let me go inside the container one more time and let me go to that location, cd etc nginx. Let me do ls. Here we have the nginx configuration. Let me do a cat nginx. Yes, we have this information present here. So that means my config file is working absolutely fine. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me exit. Okay, and let me do one thing. kubectl get pod. Okay, let me get kubectl get deployment. Let me delete this thing. kubectl delete deployment and the name of the deployment, nginx.deployment. It is deleted. kubectl get pod. Yes, it is deleted. Let me also delete the config map. kubectl delete config map, and then we need to provide the name. I don't remember the name, so let me do one thing. kubectl get config map and kubectl delete config map nginx dash config, and done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to edit my config file so that we will understand, okay, it is taking the latest on or not. Nano config. Now here, let me do one thing. Let me copy this thing. Okay. Not from this, from here I need to take it. Okay. Let me copy this thing. Let me paste it here. Yes. And let me change the listing port to 8080. Okay. Let me save it. Let me deploy kubectl apply -f config kubectl apply -f deployment and kubectl get config map and kubectl describe config map nginx dash config. See, we have this information here. Great. Now let me verify this thing from inside the container as well. So for that, kubectl get pod. I have one of the pod which is in running state. Let me copy the name of it and then kubectl exec -it. Then name of the pod, then -- bin, not like this, -- bin bash. And cd etc nginx. Let me do ls and cat nginx config. Yes, we have it here. We have this information here. So that means it is taking the value from the config map. Great. Let me do one more thing. Let me exit and let me kubectl get pod -o white. Now this is the IP address. Let's verify whether this nginx is working or not. So curl http. Yes, it is working on port number 18, but let me also see whether it is working on port number 8080. Yes, it is working. And if I'm going to try any other port, no, it is not working. So that means the configuration which we have provided in the config map, it's working.